WWE Chairman Vince McMahon reportedly has huge plans for Cody Rhodes as the former AEW wrestler and Executive Vice President nears closer to a WWE comeback. All this and more in today's WWE News. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. So Cody Rhodes, of course, Cody Rhodes is a huge story at the moment. Cody Rhodes leaving AEW, looking more and more likely to be going back to WWE. While nothing's signed at the moment, whilst nothing's official, there's been no announcement, there's been no Cody Rhodes appearance. He's going back to WWE. That looks increasingly likely at this point, and he's obviously officially left AEW as well. There's so much to talk about when it comes to this. Obviously, loads of people are talking about it, giving their opinions. I gave my initial reaction to it yesterday on the channel, so be sure to check that out. But also, there's way more news breaking about it in terms of his exit from AEW, his negotiations with Tony Khan. We're going to talk about all of that in today's AEW news video that will be coming out later today, so be sure to check that out on the channel when it does drop. Be sure to subscribe as well. You'll be notified when that is uploaded. But we're going to talk about the WWE perspective because there's a lot of news coming out about Cody Rhodes, specifically when it comes to this WWE comeback, when it comes to plans for Rhodes in the WWE, etc. So Vince McMahon, you can see it on the screen right there, reportedly has huge plans for a Cody Rhodes WWE comeback. Now, WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon is planning to give Cody Rhodes, quote, a major match at WrestleMania if Rhodes were to return to WWE. This is according to Wade Keller of PW Torch. Now, on the latest audio show that Keller did, he noted how Vince McMahon views Cody Rhodes' AEW exit as, quote, a big deal and wants to treat it accordingly. This is what Keller had to say, quote, Cody and WWE haven't confirmed it, but Cody is going to WWE and he's going to get a big push. Vince McMahon is going to treat this as a big deal. Everybody I talk to thinks Vince loves the idea of acquiring a co-founder and EVP and main event wrestler. He just held their secondary singles title not that long ago, and having him show up on WWE television is something that Vince is very interested in taking advantage of and making money on it. It could even be a situation where Cody is in a major match at WrestleMania. Now, Keller said that he's had, quote, 4+ hours of conversations with his sources within AEW and WWE, which led him to believe that Rhodes is expected to be on the WrestleMania 38 card. Quote, I fully expect Cody to be on WrestleMania either as a wrestler or making his first appearance. I don't know if they can hold back on putting him on TV, so I could even see him appearing on Raw or SmackDown next week. I'm not aware of there being any kind of non-compete clause at this point since he's been a free agent for a while, so Cody could appear. I wouldn't be shocked if there's even some augmentation to the booking plans for WrestleMania, perhaps related to the Elimination Chamber, in order to set the stage for Cody to do something really big at WrestleMania. I think Cody will get a big push, at least at first. You know, there's different opinions on whether Vince is going to resent Cody for creating competition or admire Cody for his entrepreneurial spirit and being classy about it the whole way. You know, Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, Jeff Jarrett, they all competed with Vince and they all got jobs again. So, you know, we'll see how it goes. Vince saw Cody as a mid-carder. He saw Christian as a mid-carder. Christian went to Impact Wrestling and won a world title. He came back and he got a better push, but it wasn't at the level of Edge. And to be honest, Wade, when I'm editorializing here, but he then became a mid-carder once again. So there's more to this as well, and once we get through these Cody stories, I'll give my opinion on it once more. As I mentioned, Cody is in talks with WWE. This was reported widely. It was also reported by Ariel Helwani yesterday that Cody is in talks with WWE. It's significant because Ariel Helwani works for BT Sport over here in the UK, and of course BT Sport has very strong connections with WWE, and Ariel Helwani is a very well-respected and widely known journalist. So the fact that he's reporting that basically means, yeah, Cody's going back. Cody is going back. There's no doubt about that. And as I mentioned, he's free to talk with WWE immediately. As I mentioned, it's been widely reported that he is expected to be back. WrestleVotes noted yesterday that a WWE source, quote, fully anticipates WWE and Rhodes coming to an agreement. Matt Men's Andrew Zarian reported that Cody's camp, Team Rhodes, whatever you want to call it, has been in talks with WWE about a possible deal. And that's really the situation. Multiple sources are now saying that Rhodes is in talk with WWE. The expectation is that he is going to return. So there is a lot. There really is a lot in this one, isn't there? It's still, less than 24 hours on after we went live yesterday and spoke about Cody Rhodes leaving AEW, going to WWE, it still isn't any less shocking. It still is very surprising in my eyes. I think that I put a tweet out about it yesterday, in that, I've said my things about Cody Rhodes, and I will continue to say them. But about his, I guess, perception of himself, or certainly his presentation on AEW television, I wasn't always the biggest fan of. But one thing I must say that I do somewhat admire is that he left WWE in 2016 and bet on himself. He left WWE because he felt that he was more than what Vince McMahon saw him as. He felt he was more than a mid-card guy. He was a main event guy. He was a world champion level competitor, and he bet on himself, and he said, look, I'm going to leave at a time where not a lot of people really were leaving. This wasn't a situation where there was a ton of competition around. There was Ring of Honor, there was Impact, but Impact was on a downward spiral at that point. Ring of Honor was coming up. Yes, there was New Japan, I suppose, as well, but WWE at the time was very, very dominant. This was the year 2016 where they had just signed all of those people from New Japan, right? AJ Styles, the Good Brothers, Shinsuke Nakamura, etc. So WWE was really, full-on monopoly of the industry. And Cody Rhodes left. He bet on himself, and he said, I'm going to go away, I'm going to get over, and I'm going to be a main event guy, with the intention, I guess, to always come back and say, look, I'm a main event guy. You didn't believe me? I proved myself. In that period of time, of course, he responds to the Dave Meltzer tweets, All In happens, that leads to AEW, all that kind of stuff, and there's a lot. I'm simplifying, obviously, that massive story, because it's far more complex than that, but he's instrumental to the rise and to the formation, the founding of AEW. And I think because of that, because being a cornerstone of the company, many assumed he would never leave. I thought he would never leave. But as I mentioned, he left WWE and bet on himself. And by leaving AEW and going back to WWE, he's betting on himself once more. Because for me, it can only be perceived as, and we're going to get into this in terms of the AEW news video today, because there have been reports about this, but maybe again it's perception, maybe again it's a monetary thing, maybe it's a case of Cody Rhodes wanting to, or saying to Tony Khan, with all of these people coming in, I still think I'm the biggest star in the company. And maybe it's a case of essentially having the same thought process he had in 2016. If you don't think of me in a certain way, I'm going to leave, I'm going to get more over, I'm going to become an even bigger star than I am right now in WWE, and then maybe I'll come back in the future. And I think maybe that's the case. The one thing I would say is that, and I know hindsight is very easy, and at the time, in 2016, it was a huge gamble because there wasn't a lot out there. For me, this is a massive gamble right now. It's a huge gamble because Cody Rhodes is obviously very proud of everything he's done in AEW. When you hear him in interviews, he crows about focus grouping his promos, workshopping his promos, his angles, his storylines, and how convoluted at points they have been, and how, in my opinion, off base some of them have been. That level of autonomy that he is afforded in AEW is just not going to be there in WWE. And I don't mean that as a knock to WWE. I just mean that as that's how things work. And it's not a case of he's never been to WWE as well. So he knows what environment he's stepping into. He knows what environment creatively he's stepping into. There have been lots of people that have left WWE, or their contracts have expired, or they've been released by the company, that have gone to AEW over the course of the last couple of years. And I'm sure he would have heard all of those stories about what it's currently like, what the current setup is like in WWE with Vince McMahon, Nick Khan, Bruce Pritchard, etc. So he knows what environment he's stepping into. And it's a massive risk, because at a time where certain people are leaving WWE to go to AEW because they're not confident that WWE's creative is really the safest place, or I think that Mick Foley put it best, when you're not sure if you could trust them with your career, with your character, with your, with your gimmick, whatever it may be. At a time which people are leaving WWE to go to AEW because of that, Cody Rhodes is going the other way, and it's a bold move, and it's like I said, it's a huge gamble. Obviously, Cody in these negotiations will be looking for reassurances, I'm sure, that he'll be treated as a big star and he'll be involved in main events. And whether or not that does happen, I don't know. I can't get into the mind. I don't think anyone can get into the mind of Vince McMahon as to how he perceives Cody Rhodes. And that's the big question. How does Vince McMahon perceive Cody Rhodes? If Vince McMahon has changed his tune on Cody Rhodes and sees Cody as a big star now and a main event level talent, then Cody Rhodes he'll probably, I would assume, be making more money than he made in AEW, because WWE will be really glad to get, as the report mentioned, an AEW EVP, a founder of the company, and it's a big blow. It's a huge blow to AEW, so he'll be well financially compensated, I'm sure. And if Vince McMahon has changed his tune, then you would look at that and go, wow, it's not necessarily the worst decision in the world from Cody Rhodes. He's going to work WrestleMania. It's going to reportedly have 100,000 people in the stadium each night over 2 nights. You know, it's a big deal, and he's going to make good money, and they're struggling for stars right now in WWE. Now, do you perceive Cody Rhodes as a star, as the star they're looking for? I don't know. I really don't know, and I don't know if I can answer that question. It's a gamble. It's a massive gamble. I think that Vince McMahon obviously loves it because it's a huge blow to AEW, and I think that's worth kind of figuring out as well. Is Vince McMahon going to push Cody Rhodes, or be really happy that Cody Rhodes has signed with the company because he's getting a main event level talent in his eyes? Or is he really happy that Cody Rhodes is signing because he's getting an AEW EVP? For me, it's the latter, in my opinion. Now, I might be proved wrong by that, but I think that's what weighs it, what tips the scales when it comes to Vince McMahon. Notoriously, Vince McMahon very rarely changes his tune on certain people. He has in the past, but you know, especially nowadays, he really doesn't. He's got a perception of someone and he sticks to it. Historically, as we mentioned, with people coming in that either helped a competition or at least founded competition, whether it's Dusty Rhodes, Eric Bischoff, Goldberg, Sting, all that kind of stuff, have they been pushed? Somewhat initially, but then when their run comes to an end, we go, oh, that grudge, Vince held it. So I'm like everyone else at this point. I guess the shock of really Cody Rhodes leaving AEW is still very raw, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't fascinated as to where this is going to go. And I'm sure Vince loves that. I'm sure Cody Rhodes loves that. Cody Rhodes is a guy that, again, believes in himself, wants himself to be front and center, and he's got it right now. All eyes are on Cody Rhodes and WWE at this point to see how this is going to play out. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, have a certain perspective on where they think this is going to go. Maybe not in the immediate future, because I'm sure when Cody Rhodes comes in initially, he'll probably get pushed. And he might be involved in main events. He's not going to be main event at WrestleMania, but he'll be involved in something big, I would assume, for WrestleMania. How it looks long term, I don't know. You know, and what storyline they have for him waiting straight away in WWE, I don't know. Did they go the route of just putting him in a match against a top level talent at WrestleMania, or did they go the real route, the realistic route, and having this guy that went away and helped co-found a rival company? Do they acknowledge all of that on the air? Do they acknowledge it all on the air, and they have him getting involved with Vince McMahon, or getting involved with, because if you really wanted to make a statement, you'd have Vince McMahon, Cody Rhodes, middle of the ring, shaking hands. That'd be your first statement. Cody Rhodes signing his contract in the middle of the ring. That's how you'd be like, you know, you do the Eric Bischoff, Vince McMahon. You'd almost recreate it. I know it's not exactly the same, but it's not a million miles off. If you really wanted to create buzz, that's how you do it. And Cody would love that because that's with the chairman. It doesn't get bigger than Vince McMahon. So that's why I'm fascinated. I am fascinated to see where it's going to go with that one, it must be said. And it's going to continue to rumble on, no doubt about it. A couple of things I do want to talk about. The Rock has teased an upcoming WWE return. So we've got Steve Austin, possibly, Cody Rhodes, and now possibly The Rock. The Rock is teasing a return to the company. Now, of course, The Rock was at the Super Bowl. He introduced the Super Bowl at SoFi Stadium at the weekend. Now, Jamie Ovine tweeted at The Rock. He said, quote, "So The Rock absolutely crushed his intro yesterday, but when he said millions and didn't pause for and millions by the fans, I shed a small tear." Now, Jamie's actually a part-time pro wrestler, long-time fan, son of Jimmy Ovine as well. Is it Ovine? I don't know how you say that. But The Rock said, quote, I almost sounded like The Rock there. The Rock said, quote, "Brother, that was a little Easter egg for you and the millions. Don't worry, the millions with a pause is coming soon." Winking face. So a lot of people looked at that and went, oh, The Rock's sort of teasing a return. I'm still with my prediction that what certainly, I guess, the plan is right now, whether or not The Rock has actually committed to it, we don't know. But I think the plan is Roman Reigns, The Rock, WrestleMania 39, SoFi Stadium, California. Universal Championship. Reigns will hold the title until then. He'll beat The Rock then, and that'll be The Rock's final match inside of a pro wrestling ring. That's what I think is going to happen. I think that's what WWE wants to happen. That will break all kinds of records for WWE. Not just because it's The Rock versus Roman for the first time ever, head of the table, family, tribal chief, all that kind of stuff, plus the longest reigning Universal Champion in WWE history, a run by that time that would have been going on, nearly 3 years. It's got everything to break records, and I think that is the plan. Whether or not it actually happens, they've wanted The Rock for every WrestleMania since he last wrestled, which was WrestleMania 29. So that goes to show they've wanted him every single time, and it hasn't happened because of various commitments, scheduling, etc. But it could happen next year. I think it's got the best chance of happening of The Rock, or probably the last chance of The Rock wrestling a big match, probably. Now, we have a new show coming to WWE airwaves, and that is NXT Level Up, because that is replacing 205 Live. 205 Live is going away, and NXT Level Up is debuting on Friday. Now, the inaugural NXT Level Up tapings were held yesterday prior to NXT Vengeance Day. Now, the NXT Level Up commentary was done by Nigel McGuinness and recent hire Sodhu Shah, which is the same commentary team that's been working 205 Live for a few weeks. The ring announcers were Alicia Taylor and newcomer Kelly Cansid. Cansid is the ring name for the former Ring of Honor on-air talent Quinn McKay, indicating that she is signed with the company. WWE has also released a promo for Level Up and wrote, quote, "Catch some of the WWE's brightest young talent as they look to begin their climb to the top of NXT 2.0 when NXT Level Up debuts this Friday." So that is replacing 205 Live, which is a good thing at this point. 205 Live was a joke. Like, the fact that it was 205 Live and you had people like Odyssey Jones wrestling on there over 300 pounds, and the Cruiserweight division didn't even exist at this point and all that kind of stuff. The Cruiserweight division, WWE has tried it so many times, and they've just proved at this point they can't book Cruiserweights. They can't do a Cruiserweight division. They've tried it, and they've failed multiple times. They don't know how to do it. And this NXT... under NXT show has been rumored for a while. It was going to be called NXT Evolve at one point. It was going to be Evolve, but with NXT branding, as NXT was going to be its own third brand. That's not really the case. This is, if you want to look at NXT 2.0 as officially developmental territory, this is developmental for developmental, I guess. And ultimately, I suppose, it's just programming. WWE knows when they have licensing deals with people like Peacock, and they have a platform like the WWE Network, they need programming. Nowadays, we've got streaming companies, all they care about is content. They constantly need to make content, and I suppose it gets these younger guys more TV ready, working in front of a crowd, etc., and it creates content. So it makes sense, and it makes more sense than having 205 Live, in my opinion. But also, I guess for those that are quite curious, we're going to see, and I don't mean this as disrespect, but we're going to see some matches that aren't pretty in this one, but you have to expect that going in. That, these are people that really are learning on the job. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that one, it must be said. Let's talk about Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw, the viewership on Sci-Fi is out this week, and Monday's live Elimination Chamber Go-Home edition of Raw on Valentine's Day drew an average of 1.602 million viewers on Sci-Fi, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now, this is actually up quite significantly. It's up over 15% from last week's 1.387 million viewers for the first two Sci-Fi episodes. Now, it drew a 0.44 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic, which is also up over 22% from last week's 0.36 key demo rating. Raw ranked number 1 for the night in the cable top 150 with that 0.44 rating. Raw ranked 18th for the night in terms of viewership on cable. This week's Raw drew what has to be considered strong numbers, considering it was on Sci-Fi and still faced competition from the Winter Olympics. So I think they're very happy with that, WWE, considering the audience and key demo rating beat many shows that aired on the USA Network and were both up from last week's lowest audience ever in terms of a primetime airing for last week's second lowest key demo rating ever as well. So I think they'll be very happy, and considering the competition, as I mentioned, Winter Olympics, etc., and being on Sci-Fi, I'm sure WWE will be thrilled, and I suppose it's probably a good sign coming into WrestleMania that even on a change of networks, they did what they would consider to be a decent number on that. So they would hope coming out of Elimination Chamber on Monday, road to WrestleMania, they might see some strong numbers from Raw in the coming weeks. A couple other things as well, as WrestleMania approaches. Reportedly, we're going to be looking at, Steve Austin at WrestleMania. We're looking at big matches like Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, possibly Cody Rhodes, whatever he's doing at WrestleMania. We might be also getting a big surprise, because reportedly there's a big surprise plan for WrestleMania 38. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the Steve Austin rumors are going on, and we don't know what that's going to happen. Some people in WWE are talking like it's a done deal. Some people are saying, well, it's kind of been thrown out there. We don't know. But that might not be the only surprise that's planned for WrestleMania, though. Dave Meltzer noted on the Wrestling Observer radio show that another, quote, Austin-level surprise is planned for WrestleMania. He speculated the names like Hulk Hogan, The Undertaker, or Ric Flair. First of all, I'll get into the quote first. There's apparently one more surprise besides Austin still to come, and it's supposed to be Austin level, and that's a pretty small list that could be Austin level. I think Dwayne, The Rock's got stuff going on, so I don't think it's going to be him. So who else do we have? Hogan, Flair, Undertaker, right? Is there anybody else still alive that would qualify at that level? For me, it's not Ric Flair, because Ric Flair, that ain't happening. Hulk Hogan, he was at WrestleMania last year. It's not much of a surprise, and he got booed out of the building. The Undertaker seems likely to me. I think there's a real chance that he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. It makes sense. Texas guy, etc. So I think The Undertaker goes in. I was saying before, for me, they shouldn't have anyone else in the Hall of Fame this year. Just put The Undertaker in. He's the guy. Now, whether or not they do that, I doubt it. But I feel like The Undertaker will be there. He's been shown on some of the ticket sales, promo merchandise, and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's going to be Undertaker in the hat and all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be the American Badass version of The Undertaker as well. I don't know if he's going to get physical or anything like that. We have not seen him since The Undertaker said his final farewell at Survivor Series in 2020. So it's going to be curious. But on all of the promo images used for The Undertaker involving WrestleMania, he was as the American Badass, because the Phenom, the dead man, has gone away. He's over. We're not going to see him ever again, apparently. So I would assume Austin level has got to be The Undertaker. If not, I have no idea. I really have no idea who else it could be. Finally, we know Ronda Rousey's teaming up with Naomi at Elimination Chamber to face Charlotte Flair and Sonya Deville, but there's a really weird stipulation added to this one, because PW Insider are reporting that Ronda Rousey will wrestle the match with one arm tied behind her back. This stipulation will reportedly be revealed on this Friday's episode of SmackDown, which was, of course, taped last week in New Orleans. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. Unless they're trying to be like, well, we're really trying to save Ronda and Charlotte for WrestleMania, then otherwise don't book the match. I don't understand that one. I really don't, but okay. Whatever. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.